And so the power of the support group is key to basically reorient and reframe our perspective of today's suffering to that there is light. Because that's what we have to do. We have to reframe so that now we can have vision that I have to withstand this pain to get the long-term benefit.
Yeah.
That is the key breakthrough.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Ascending Thoughts podcast here. I am with William Rogers. William, it's a great day. I'm so glad to be back here with you. I just wanted to introduce you from our beef discussion a few weeks ago and how we are overcoming the problems of the day and how to get through the issues and just ascend so that we can reach our fullest potential. Pleasure to have you on the show again.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, neighbors. It's a beautiful day here in our to podcast with everyone. Welcome. We in our own neighborhood, in the metaverse, our own metahood. This is a safe space where we can talk and basically come together on in terms of how to overcome some of the challenges that we're all experiencing and basically have a positive discussion how we can move forward and uplift our lives to greater outcomes.
That sounds great. Let's get right back into it here for the first topic of the day. William, I wanted to address my concern personally as a young adult coming into the world and into the workforce is we see a little bit of the costs are up and everything. I just wanted to pick your brain on what's going on with and people are feeling a little bit of some financial anxiety. And we were just wondering as the viewer, what are some ways to cope with that and just elaborate?
As we have, I think that many people out there and many of us feel that there's this constant deluge that you go every day, whether it's to fill up your car, you're going to a grocery store, a mother who has a child, and if their child gets sick or that they need diapers and milk, and if a young couple wants to go get a place and rent an apartment, there's this feeling of just in terms of when we see things of just being out of control, hopelessness, despair, we're getting that feeling that things are out of reach and that this is building and building. And there's that general sense of what a lot of people are going through that they can't necessarily point. It's that kind of culmination things. And in terms of many of us out there, in terms of in feeling with that, and what is extremely relevant in terms of in today's discussion is that we need to develop ways to basically how do we cope with these feelings of despair and anxiety, because being able to deal and address with our own mental health has a direct correlation to our own personal finances. In too many aspects in our lives, we try to basically separate and put them in what we call different silos. So when people are basically talking about feelings of depression and anxiety and stress and burnout and all those, we try to put that in a box. And then when we're talking about financial issues, meaning that I'm living paycheck to paycheck, I'm basically the general feeling when people that their daily expenses, what we call to cost of living is more than what they're
it feels
making.
like it's running on and on.
It's called the sinking feeling. Yeah. What I'm just basically stating at is the separation to not looking at them as one and the same.
Okay.
Because to improve ultimately in our finances, and also too, in my own experience, and as well as counseled as a people over 25 years, you're not going to make it from one day to the next. There is no get-rich-quick scheme. And we're not here to go in terms of promoting that. It's the acceptance that long-term financial improvement is a process. And having been involved in 12-step meetings as a volunteer and a counselor, the principle of progress over perfection. And the idea that it's a daily, weekly that we're going in terms of paths. So as people are embarking on ways to improve their finances, it's that understanding is I have the feeling of pain today and that pain of next week, but I got to learn to cope with it because I'm trying to be on the pathway to improve myself as I'm doing through education, getting skills and certificates within my jobs, trying to basically market my resume and go to other companies. My point being is that It's not one day to the next. It's in terms of process, but the pain and anxiety and still trying to deal with that. And that's why managing in terms of our mental health is so crucial.
Yeah, it seems that for some reason that day in and day out, just getting grinded with costs and costs when you are living paycheck to paycheck, it's very tiresome for
It's
so
not
many
just
people,
tiresome.
and it's really
Think about what it does to people's self-esteem. Think about what it does to their general feeling and sense of happiness and fulfillment. If you're involved in terms of in a relationship and you're trying to go out for, let's say, a nice evening with your significant other, and that's becoming of uppermost mind that can't afford to go to dinner tonight. I have to, and how that may in a way affect a relationship because money becoming front and center. You have in terms of those peoples that imagine in terms of in the relevance of today, many young women out there who all of a sudden that they have a child, it's unexpected, it's unplanned, and the fear and trepidation what people are going through and how am I going to be able to afford it? Do I have to stop school? Can I be able to work? The cost of childcare, those in terms of in those feelings going through. And the point that I want to make is that the management of our mental health is absolutely vital because as I've seen in my experience and as I've walked through in terms of the journey with everyone who's been struggling and to basically to send to better outcomes, this is when we're at our most vulnerable. We're at our most vulnerable basically to go down and sink in that downward spiral of what we call addiction and other vices. And why? Because we want relief of that pain.
yeah.
You're going to drink. You're going to, as you're seeing a lot of people, and you may have in terms of cohorts and others, they will go and smoke marijuana. They will go and potentially do drugs. They will go and gamble. The purpose is what people are not unpacking, and we have to separate out is doing something socially. It might be fun. It's like you go out to dinner, you have a glass of wine or a beer. I'm separating that from potential things that we're using as abuse because we're trying to numb a pain or a condition we're going through. And that's what we're all missing in the mix because too many of us look at addiction as the junkie who's out there on the park bench, person who's lost their lives and thrown away. And I hate to tell you out there are a lot of people with the problem that they're in denial, but they're still working. They're still paying in terms of bills. They're seeking in terms of this obsessive, compulsive behavior to escape as a form of escape. And it comes in many different forms. It could be porn, meaning that they're getting absorbed into it. It could be people in gambling. It could be people in terms of that they're wanting to use marijuana. They're wanting to in terms of drink. And it is not my job, nor is it my expertise to say is one more lethal than the other, what we say pharmacology, because there'll be people swear when it doesn't do anything, but cocaine and heroin can. All what I'm just trying to identify is the commonality of the things that we tend to abuse to basically as an anesthetic for seeking relief of our own pain of what's actually going on. And the outcome and effect that it has upon our relationships, our kids, our family, our friends, because naturally is when people are in these states, what do they tend to do? We get withdrawn, don't want to be around. And more importantly, what we don't realize and what we're going to explore more in terms of in this show, we also seek out people who are enablers, who are basically negative when we say bad influences, who give us more of this behavior. And so that's where I'm talking about that slippery slope.
Yeah, because once you hit that and then you could find that enabler, you have the blinders on.
Hey, Brian, let's go to hit the slots.
Yeah.
You start out as a guy just doing slots and then you run your whole paycheck and then you're taking cash advances on your cards.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, let's go in terms of hit a joint. And then all of a sudden you're just spending in terms of your whole time is just in terms of smoking marijuana. I'm not going to talk about the pharmacological effects. I'm talking about the distinction when people get caught in the trap and vicious cycle of addictive behavior. And I see that commonality all across in any different type because it is a coping mechanism that people employ to basically to soothe the pain that they're going through.
Yeah, exactly. And the hardest thing is realizing, coming to the moment and figuring out that you are doing something destructive and taking that first step. As they say, the first step for progress, and you're striving for progress,
Yes.
not perfection.
And because we're naturally withdrawn, in our previous show, when we were talking about the pending 3 R's on the horizon of rising interest rates, rising inflation, risk of inflation, one of the big, in terms of takeaways, we talk about the need of forming your group and your community.
Yeah, the community part.
The support group is what's key. And when you have a good, proper support group, what people don't realize is that to actually love someone means to call someone out.
Yeah.
It's not to basically say, Brian, that's okay. Go and drink. Go and do drugs. A person who loves you knows the difference between, Brian, that's unusual. You're a one-drink person. You're not someone who's out getting wasted. That's not you. And that's what a real support, a positive support group does. And what people don't realize is that to actually properly cope, we have to go through and look and survey in these relationships.
Yeah.
And there are relationships in our family, in our close friends that are toxic and destructive that lead us down in terms of these behaviors. And if we're going to want to get better, again, I'm trying to make the linkage so everyone knows you can't separate your mental health and your state and your feeling of self-esteem and confidence from your financial outcomes and success. They are truly linked together. And we have to basically do this in concert. And so we have to cut off and get away from many of these type of relationships. And that's what keeps us trapped.
Yeah.
You notice is like in terms of too, and having obviously grown up poor and being in debt and trying to get out of debt and then getting back in terms of, it's not just in terms of where people are looking at substance abuse. There's a lot of what we call in terms of influences or people around in these similar type of circumstances. So not only is our self-esteem down, we're envious of other people who might be successful. So we in a way want to sabotage them. So that's what people don't realize. And when you're in 12-step programs and in others, there are people who consciously, subconsciously try to sabotage us. That's why they end up becoming in these enablers, because they don't want to see someone succeed because they're doing so poorly.
Yeah.
It ends up in happening. But also, too, what people have to realize is that this is when we're at the most vulnerable, because this is where we're seeing domestic violence. People's a way of lashing out. If you're doing poorly in terms of in your life, you need someone to scapegoat. Sexual abuse, you're seeing in terms of in a lot of these commonalities, a lot of these social ills of where it's emanating out from. So we have to go and address this in terms of proper and healthy coping, because this is how a lot of people are coping. They're lashing out. They're lashing out and taking it out on people who are innocent, who have nothing to do in terms of what their current plight. But this is what you're seeing in terms of embedded in all these social ills, is when you're in these poorer type of communities of how of making it so difficult. It's not just the mental health, but in terms of in these social, in terms of ills of people lashing out. And then you're basically growing up in a household being subjected to domestic violence or child abuse and all of these things. So we absolutely have to address the mental health component.
And going off on that subject, I feel that instead of coming to the root problem and putting a tourniquet on it and ceasing it, we're just putting a Band-Aid on it.
The reason is because we're looking at things as individuals and not as community. And one of the important aspects in terms of in this show and trying to bring back in terms of the ideals of the late Fred Rogers, who graced us with his presence on public broadcasting that I grew up with, and that he was on air from 1968 to 2004, is that we need a sense of values and we need a sense of community.
Yeah.
And as technology has evolved and we are more and more on social media, online, and dealing with people virtually, we are retreating to our inner selves, and the ugly is coming out versus our better angels. We're becoming more narcissistic. We're becoming more vain, vitriolic, and divisive. And for us to have a proper countermeasure and counterforce to addressing this, because our problems are not going to go away from one day to the next. It's long term, but there's power in numbers when we have a support group. Just as when they talk about in the people in meetings in 12 step, the support that they feel of the others of everyone going through.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be in terms of insulin addiction. It's the takeaway is we're alone, we're isolated. We need to draw in, and we need to have a community of people who's going to help inspire us, encourage us, and hold us accountable to healthy behaviors, and that we can all grow and prosper mutually.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just thinking of personally growing up, seeing the neighborhood. I remember growing up and playing with everybody, and now it seems like there's no sense of community. It's just you live in the house in the neighborhood, you drive by, yeah, you might wave to the neighbor, but that's it. You're not going to, hey, can I go borrow a lawn tool or something like that? There's no cohesion.
There's a term in terms of being used by younger people is that maintaining my space. I want to keep my space. And all I'm just stating is that more and more of us are feeling alone. Yes, we want to maintain space. We don't want to basically be in terms of an all clingy, but there's a reason of why this feeling of togetherness is I don't feel alone. I feel loved. And more importantly, in the therapeutic sense, if you are hurting, Brian, if someone's hurting out there, you need someone to talk to, because there's this cathartic aspect of, Brian, I'm going to have a new baby coming up and I'm scared. I don't know how we're going to make it, versus you keeping it bottled up. There are a lot of people going through that. You could be speaking to someone your parents' age who's near retirement in 6 months. They go, God, the stock market's been taking a dump. I don't know if I'm going to be able to retire or should I continue to work. We have to voice our fears.
Yeah.
And to show that we're not alone. That's how you can cope. It's by sharing in terms of that, we can create the encouragement, and we are able to be in a position to now process it from a different, more rational mind versus our guttural fight or flight instinct.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in that process, now we can think a little bit more clearly about strategies or changes that we can implement to basically prevail and overcome. Because at the end of the day, if we want to ascend to better financial outcome, we are going to have to make what we call some course corrections, whether we're going to go back to school and get a degree, we're going to wholesale change in terms of our current job, that the prospects are limited within the company and look all out. But if our mental health and our self-esteem and confidence is at an all-time low, we're not poised.
Yeah. We're not going to take that step.
We're questioning ourselves, talking ourselves down. We're not feeling
taking action.
I'll give you an example. If a person has high self-esteem and high confidence, they believe, I've got a lot of experience, I've got a lot of knowledge and capability, and so I'm going to put my resume and try and get interviews out there. But if you're being beat up day in and day out, you're questioning yourself.
You
don't even want to take the risk.
Yeah.
And so the support group is key, having in terms of in that so that you can voice your problems. But we as individuals have to realize is that our natural instinct as people is to bottle it up. So we have to take the first step and ask, what's going on? We have to take the step forward to get people to open up if we are going to have improvements so that they can feel a safe space to talk and voice their problems. We need to understand the reality is that most people are not going to feel comfortable, nor are they going to have the finances or the insurance to go seek a mental health professional. That's just a fact. But what people can do is have a good support group of people who you can voice these concerns. The thing is, we need a safe space because a lot of us, our own pride, we're going to feel humiliated, we're going to feel less than. There's reasons of why we keep it all bottled up. We don't want to be judged. And what we need to do as people is to create those safe spaces and reach out and give that helping hand. Tell me what's going on. I'm not here to judge you. I just want to listen. And that is going to have a transformative process, an outcome that will lay the foundation for people to ascend in their lives.
Yeah, and those are very big steps to take. And I think a lot more people need to hear that, you know, there is hope and there is those
I was
areas
broke.
and those
I was
people
down
when,
and
you
out.
know,
I was in debt. But my support group, believe it or not, Brian, I was at the University of Southern California. I was in an MBA program. I felt like I was on the king of the world, even though in my day, Monday through Friday, I'm being beat up. I'm being pummeled. I have a small kid. I'm like, how am I going to do it? How am I going to be able to provide for them and my wife? But there was this faith I had, and going and getting that higher education, and also just being in that kind of cocoon, my support group, my students, and that many people in my class, some were working at Microsoft, others were working at Boeing. There was an inspiration I felt that helped transform and propel me. And so the power of the support group is key to basically reorient and reframe our perspective of today's suffering to that there is light. Because that's what we have to do. We have to reframe so that now we can have vision that I have to withstand this pain to get to long-term benefit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the key breakthrough.
And I think that when you said you have to withstand this pain for a period of time, that takes patience, and that's really tough.
Yes, and it can take years. And for me, it took 10 years. Being in debt, paying it down, getting back in debt. We had recession. We had a horrible financial crash thrown at us. I came out of 9/11 and all of that and having to endure. So in knowing in what people go through, it's not just the patience, it's the fortitude, it's the strength. It's like you're in a boxing match day in and day out, getting your butt whooped, pummeled every single day. That's what it feels like for a lot of people who are struggling. But to get ahead and being able to, that you can find that hope in that reframing that what you're doing is going to pay off.
Yeah.
And that was the guiding light that I had at the University of Southern California.
Interesting. Yeah, it's going through years of experience and you going through those many years of patience and that mental fortitude is definitely is eye-opening. And, you know, someone that looks up to you, I'm just thinking of what can we do as a younger generation, as the generation after you?
For any generation, young, middle-aged, and old, we have to have a self-care regimen. Because one of the big takeaways that I've learned and from any support group is we're talking about having a community, voicing, trying to share. In addition, and part of that toolbox is self-care. Because what is happening is our natural instinct is we're seeking a relief and escape of pain. That's why there's so much of us who are vulnerable for addiction, because they're seeking relief. But self-care is meant to be the substitute. Now, oftentimes when we're limited by means, we say, I can't afford in terms of in all these when we talk about a nice trip and this and that, but exercise, movement, getting out, walks, hikes, there is a natural therapeutic outcome of movement. We have to implement it. We also have to implement the right foods. There is a natural instinct that when we're feeling down, we're going to go to more of foods. That's why they call them comfort foods. And we end up again and abusing on that. All I'm just stating is this is where that self-care regimen is critical, because that is going to build your strength as you're getting pummeled day in and day out, that you're building that shield of armor. Because when we don't have the shield of armor, we're vulnerable. Hey, Brian, take a hit. Brian, let's just go get wasted.
No,
you don't have a shield of armor.
No, I'm good. I just had a great workout. I feel amazing.
But not only that, you also, if you have friends in a support group, that you feel loved.
Yeah.
And people are not creating the shield of armor, and that's what self-care is meant to do. So we have to have a conscientious effort of self-care, because when we're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, we're vulnerable and at risk. And say, Brian, take a hit. You'll feel better. Take a hit. And that's what's happening in terms of in a lot of people because that pain is intolerable. But the self-care is ended up building in terms of that endurance. It's like when you're going to go out and run, you're going to be huffing and puffing on one lap. But the more that you're doing it, you're building up the endurance. It's the same thing. Self-care is meant to build up the endurance, and it's the psychological fortitude as well as our own physical health and how we feel about ourselves. And there are a lot of studies that show is that when we're doing this movement, exercise, engaging with other people, we're emitting hormones, oxytocin, which
Makes you feel
is happiness.
Yeah.
We're emitting it versus the cortisol, which is the stress hormone when we're feeling anxious, frustrated, flustered, lonely. So this is why self-care is absolutely has to be first and foremost. And when we're lacking in terms of in money, and we don't have in terms of means, we need to find alternatives, whether we get out on a bike, go on a walk, call a buddy, go out with someone, go down to the park, go shoot some hoops, go in and exercise. We need to go and find ways because there are numerous ways we can implement self-care without money.
Yeah, and it could be as easy as doing a 10-minute walk every day. Getting out. We live in San Diego. It's sunny 300 days
it's
a year.
even better when you do it with someone. It's even more beneficial.
And that brings back, once again, what you preach is the community. Having the community around you.
The community, there is a strength in numbers. And I am fearful, Brian, that we are in a time and age that we are being driven apart. There's a tremendous amount of vitriol that basically we've got this amping of a culture war and misinformation to create this sort of antipathy amongst in terms of people. And what we need to sit back and really question, and as I tell people and the viewers out there, turn it off. You don't need to watch that on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube because it's not serving you. It's not meant to help you. It's meant to help those people who are basically out to try and peddle their cult of celebrity. Just keep in mind, only a select few benefit of division by making us at each other's throats.
Yeah.
They're fearful that we get together and band together and be unified, the things that we can do and the things that we can overcome. That's what they're fearful of. But I'm telling you, simple acts, random acts of kindness, reach out to people, give them a helping hand, listen, empathy. These are our building blocks for a better tomorrow and ascending to greater heights.
Yeah, you said it right there. Yeah, like I said, you just explained the key to getting and ascending to greater heights is the community, being together and putting forth that effort to reach out and call someone, call a friend, call a loved one, open the door for someone, do something good, do good, as we said in the previous show, do good, do a good deed, do something.
Exactly. And as we come in this holiday season and embark on Thanksgiving and families and friends get together, let's make a conscientious effort to be kind, be empathetic. Let's listen. Let's reach across and we need to heal.
Yeah.
And this healing is going to help in terms of that anxiety, that pressure, that fear that everyone's feeling. You're not going to be feeling alone. There's someone there in terms of with you. And you're going to be able to be on that path of making those steps to a better tomorrow.
And as Thanksgiving is coming up, I just thought of something I think for me personally, every day I'm going to say, what am I thankful for? I'm thankful for the air in my lungs, my health, my family, my friends, my job, everybody around me. I'm thankful for my community. And so I think for the message of the day being in November, coming up to Thanksgiving, everybody, what are you thankful for? Reach out to that person, reach out to that loved one. And I know William, same way. So this is hitting home for me, all these topics and all these things that we're thankful for and what we wish for and everything. Yeah. And William, do you have anything else to close out? It seems like we're wrapping up.
The only thing I can say in terms of uncertainty is I've been able to see in the trajectory of my life is that when you look back over the course of 30 years, and I know that in terms with a lot of young people coming up and feeling that the current economic state is new in terms of them, I just want to let you know is that there have been people who've been enduring that for 30 years. that they've been feeling the way that you're talking about and describing. That, and when you think back in 30 years, we've had some economies that felt like it was blah, the old Goldilocks, too hot, too cold. And then we had some that were going down in the tubes. But there have been people in those 30 years who have not gotten ahead and who've been feeling that I'm 1-2 paychecks away from being out on the street, that I'm worried that basically at the end of every month, can I afford to go buy food? There are a lot of people out there who feel that way and who felt that way. We got to reach out. We got to listen and empathize so that we can uplift in terms of people. We need to build the community because there are a lot of people who are forgotten out there.
Yeah. Wow. Whew. I can't imagine the people out there for the last 30 years going through that.
That's why you're feeling the frustration and the grievance that you see out there that is leading to this vitriol because they're looking for someone to blame. But there are people who've been forgotten.
Interesting.
And what we have to do is we have to have compassion. We have to empathize and say, you're not alone, and we're here to listen to you. I hear you. I see you. And how we as a community can help each other.
Yeah. What can
we as a community can help each other instead of saying, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're doing is we're creating walls of ourselves of saying, I'm disconnected from that. That's up in Los Angeles. I'm disconnected from that.
Yeah.
That's over there in Baton Rouge. I'm disconnected from that. We have to look in terms of we all share the same community. That's what we're here trying to do is bring, even though that we're all communicating via technology in this sort of metaverse space, we have a meta-hood, a neighborhood of where people can come together, and we want to inspire and offer compassion
you can come
for
to
people
that neighborhood coffee
and come
shop.
to this neighborhood so that people can be a part of something.
Yeah, you can come to the neighborhood coffee shop and talk.
Yeah, and have the conversation, and we're here to hear you and help you.
So I think with that, do you have any takeaways that you want to emphasize? I know you touched a lot on the community. You touched
a couple of the key points is we've got to look in terms of in not just the community is that
the
support
self-care
group
and support.
We also have to, number 2 is we have to be observant in taking inventory of where I am at risk of the negative downward spiral because of our natural reaction to want to find escape. And that's why I talk about that vulnerability of what we call substance abuse, as well as to getting mixed up to people who are just toxic for us, so that we seek those out and we get withdrawn from people who are truly beneficial and love us. We have to try and be observant. And 3 is that community and support group helps check us, helps reach out and say, is everything good? Instead of leaving people alone. Because as when people say, I need my space, you could be suffering. You're just in silence.
Yeah.
So we need to reach out and check in on people so that we can, and when you really love someone, call them out and see that they're going off the wrong path. And taking a conscientious effort in terms of their self-care, making self-care as part of our own routine, because that is our toolbox and our armor that we are building to basically, we need good nutrients in the mind, in our bodies, and in everything. And as we're doing on a daily basis to help us withstand and ascend to more prosperous outcome in the future.
Be that prosperous person and be filled with love and with gratitude and with thankfulness for what we've worked for and the people around us.
Exactly.
So I think, man, those are so amazing. Every time we do this podcast, I feel like I learn more about life, but also learn more about myself. And I hope that the viewers at home are getting as much out of this as I'm getting, being the narrator of it. Like I've said before, you've hit the nail on the head, and it seems like you hit a home run with this, and I'm still processing all the things that you were saying. It's going to take me a little while because that's just how I am. But I would like to thank our viewers once again. Thank you for coming in, tuning in to our show, and I'm very happy to see you guys for the next show. William?
Thank you, everyone, and be a hero by doing good and try to make an effort for simple random acts of kindness.
Thank you.